we're out of time on this one. We're going to go now to a slightly shorter round of 5 minutes, starting with Mr. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses here today. I'm going to start my questions with the Indigenous Resource Council, if I could, please. It'd be great to hear some responses as well. Your community's representation as workers in the resource industry is higher than other communities' participation in the resource industry. And these jobs, of course, pay more than any other jobs in Canada, but particularly in your communities. And you're participating. Your labor, your Indigenous regional benefits. Now you're finally getting equity. After years of trying, recognition of Section 35 rights, you've come a long way, and this is very important, and we're pleased to see that progress. I particularly am pleased to see that progress. And yet you've been catching up. And think about the leadership you brought to this. But one common note I heard here from a few of the witnesses, of course, is this just transition, complete misstatement in my opinion, is being put forth without the consultation of the Indigenous communities. It is, in fact, as Mr. Wapis says, an unjust transition. Can you tell me, Stephen Saddleback, how you see this operating better as far as the outcomes for your community over the next decade?
Thank you for that question, MP McLean. And, thank you for all the comments and for allowing us to be a part of the round table today. In terms of, the discussion at hand, this committee is labeled just transition. And one of the things that since the onset of this reminds me of a just society that was put forward and which ultimately resulted in the white paper. And what happened with that is ultimately a result of the red paper. And if we look back at the history, that came about because of a lack of consultation with First Nation communities. And that's how this, we were notified about this activity, without having that involvement with First Nations and that being down in First Nation communities, having that consultation with those chiefs and councils, as our board member, former Chief Wapis had indicated. So I just want to have that as a point of order, is to, for folks to be mindful of that, is that consultation does need to happen. In terms of,
sorry, Mr. Style, I have to move quickly here because I've only got a short amount of time. Okay. So just quickly, if I can, and appreciate the comments on the different papers that are going there. If I can move to Mr. Wapis now, please. Mr. Wapis, we talk about, sorry, not Mr. Wapis, my apologies. Mr. Swampy. Mr. Swampy, we talk about jurisdiction here. You think about how much you've participated in with the Alberta government, Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation, and also, the education that you brought up here and the programs that this has helped. Can you comment on the jurisdictional overlap that the government at the federal level is trying to impose here to more or less put another ratchet, another regulatory hurdle in your society's social advancement, please?
That's right. UNDRIP legislation, in my mind, is a vehicle for the government to be able to stop projects that First Nations are supporting. Whereas, it's contradicting the fact that once you give power to First Nations to deny a project, you also give power to First Nations to build a project. And we think we should be given the same rights that are afforded for First Nations across the country and across North America, and that is to develop our own traditional territories. You look at Alaska, 13 bills of Congress, and the tens of millions of acres that were given to First Nations out there. They never sold 1 acre of those lands to a foreign country or private landholder. They kept that land and they developed it, and they developed it properly. It doesn't mean that model can't work in Canada. And that's what we're all about. Reconciliation's about land. Give us back the land you signed to us at treaty, and then we'll take advantage of it.
Thank you, Mr. Wapis. Same question. Can Mr. Saddleback answer that question as well, please?
When we talk about, the involvement with First Nations communities and, energy sector has been a big part of our First Nations, and we can have that balance between economic development and the environment. There was some mention about jobs creation. In the last 18 months, Indian Resource Council has created over 400 jobs, which include not only reclamation, well activity, and cleaning up over 1,800 wells in the province of Alberta, but have created careers looking at alternative energies. When we talk about poverty, we talk about this just transition, and we need to ensure that those communities, those First Nations, which are going to be most greatly impacted by any fluctuation in energy prices. So, where are we going to get these dollars when we do these increases in investment in alternative energies? And those activities that are happening with a family that's living on social assistance that doesn't have activity in their nation. We're not sitting there in a major center. We need to be mindful of that when we're talking about these just transitions.
Okay, great. Thank you. We're going to